What hinders us, and I've always wondered this because it seems to be one of those where like I don't get it, is what hinders us believers from believing the promises of God? And what I mean by that is, if we really believe the promises of God, like we're going to see Caleb is given as an example, if we really believe the promises of God, there would be some evidence in my life to demonstrate I believe what God is saying. So why do we have so hard time believing the promises of God? Maybe because some of them are so fabulous that we say, how is this possible? How could God possibly do this? This is above and beyond. Well, isn't that God? Above and beyond everything that we ask or think? So maybe that's what it is. Maybe how could God do this? This is so fantastic. But we tend to question the promises of God. So where we're at basically in the history of Israel is simply this. Israel has been in Egypt for a total of 430 years. God, by his mighty right arm, comes down and redeems them out of the land of Egypt, takes them all the plagues, takes them out of Egypt through the Red Sea. They've gone on to Mount Sinai where we receive the covenant of God and God's promises to the nation, his promise to them of the land that is coming. He's going to, in fact, 600 years before he promised Abraham, about 600 years, he would give them this land. So now it's time for them to come into the land, that promised land that God made to Abraham, that he's going to give him this land. Now it's time for them to go in. But before they cast lots to determine the inheritance, so if you kind of picture in your mind, the leaders, the heads of the tribes would come to the leaders would cast lots, they're dice-like objects, cast lots, and the Lord would work in the lots, and then he would determine which tribe got which land, the parceling out of the land, of the promised land. Before they cast lots for the inheritance, Caleb comes to Joshua in this text right now, and this is the dialogue in verse number 6. Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal. Now let me just stop for a second. Gilgal is the first place when they crossed over the Jordan River, they camped at Gilgal. At Gilgal, they circumcised all of the males who had not been circumcised, and then they waited for that painful event to get over with. Men, at least have a nod, okay? Okay. So after the painful event was over with, then they celebrated the first Passover in the promised land. This took place at Gilgal. So from Gilgal, they branch out across the promised land in about a 5-year period of war, fighting against all the nations that are in the land which God had promised to Abraham. So they've been in battle for about 5 years up to this point. They're back at Gilgal now to disperse the land. Okay? And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to Joshua, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, in Kadesh Barnea concerning you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him word again as it was in my heart. But my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you, Caleb, and your children forever, because you wholly followed the Lord my God." There's a second time we see that, wholly followed the Lord. "And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years, since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now, behold, I am this day 85 years old. I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for war and for going and coming. So now give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day that he made the promise to me 45 years ago. For you heard on that day how the Anakim, that's the giants, were there, with great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Lord said." So here comes this request from Caleb now. Caleb's words to Joshua of their experience that they had 45 years earlier about what happened on that fateful day. Now, many of you know the story, but just in case you don't know the story, let's go back and we'll read the story real quick so we kind of put it in a context. Happens in Numbers chapter 13. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land. And they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them, to all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. So they sent out 12 spies. They come back with evidence of the fruit of the land, and all the people can see the evidence of the fruit of the land. It's quite amazing. And they told him, we came to the land to which you sent us. In other words, God sent them out. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Yeah, look at how great this is. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large, and we're just small compared to the... No, wait, that's my sarcasm getting in there. Okay. But listen to this. However, what do you mean, however? God promised the land to Israel. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. That's the giants. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea. And they're just whining. What's wrong with them? Although, you know what? We shouldn't fault them. Maybe you and I would have done the same thing. We would have come back with a bad report. I don't know. But they come back with this report that is contrary to the promise of God. Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, so here's Caleb's point of view. Let us go up at once and occupy it. No, however, the giants are there, that's true, but God promised us this land. Let's go up and occupy it. For we are well able to overcome it. Then the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are. Sorry, I just had to do that. I had to do that. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they were spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. There we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, that's the giants who come from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. Oh, God may have promised us, but you know what? These people are much bigger than God. Now, they would never say that. They would never say that these people are bigger or more powerful than God, but in their actions, that's exactly what they're saying. They're saying God isn't able to deliver us from this great people. They're just too big for us. They're too mighty, too fortified. We can't handle this, is what the 10 said. But Caleb and Joshua said, no, God made a promise to us, and we will have this land. Let's go get it right now. I love that attitude. So God made a promise to Caleb to bring him into the land of Canaan and give him an inheritance. So when he went out with the 10 tribes, they wandered in the land, and God promised him, where your feet has wandered, I'm going to give you that land as a promise. Caleb, this is my promise to you. In fact, in Numbers chapter 14, we read this. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it. So think about that. This Caleb had a different spirit. Well, what was the spirit of the other people? They were afraid of men. Caleb and Joshua said, no, we're not afraid of the men. God is more powerful than anyone. He will keep his promises. So one group are fear of men, and the other group trusts God. So Caleb is of a different spirit. He's the one who trusts God. He's not afraid of what man can do to him. He believed God. He had been faithful for 45 years in this promise. 45 years, he's holding on to this promise that God made him for 45 years. 45 years is a long time to wait for a promise to come into fulfillment. That's a long time to wait. Many of us are not that patient that we would wait 45 years for a promise to come into fulfillment. But Caleb's courage shows no trace of self-sufficiency, only believing dependence on the Lord. It wasn't like he was arrogant and said, oh, I'm such a great person and God really favors me because I gave it and I'm so cool and therefore I get this. No, he understood that he's fully depending on God to give him this land. It's not that he's special. It's not that he deserves it above anyone else, other than God made a promise to him. It's God's promise to him. He's not being self-serving by claiming this promise. He's claiming a promise that God had made to him. He's saying, God, you said this. I believe it. Now let's do it. That's the idea. It was not arrogant for Caleb to claim the promise of God. Some people think, oh, that's so arrogant. What's Caleb think? He's some kind of special person that he should have the promise of God? What's wrong with this Caleb guy? It is not arrogant to claim the promises of God. When God says to you, I promise you this, and we say to him, God, you said you promised me this, I believe you. That is not arrogance. That is trust. Why do we sometimes think that it's arrogant for us to claim a promise of God? Like, why should I remind God of anything? God knows all things. Why should I remind him of his promise? I just feel like that's self-sufficient. Maybe we should think differently about this. Maybe we should think differently about claiming the promises of God. It actually would be a lack of faith if we don't claim the promises of God. It's not arrogance. It would be a lack of faith if we don't claim the promises of God. It would be like saying, hey, God, thanks for the offer. It was really nice of you, but I got this covered. I don't need it. It actually dishonors God to say no thank you to his offer. When God makes a promise to us, he will fulfill his promise to us. It is not arrogant for us to say, God, you promised this and I believe it and I'm acting on what you promised. That is not arrogant. As a matter of fact, it would dishonor God not to claim his promises. So let me ask you, what promise of God do you need to claim today? Here's where we find the promises of God. Where in this book is a promise? You need peace? He promises peace that surpasses all understanding. You need joy? He'll fill your heart with joy. Do you need to be reassured you're not alone in this world? I will never leave you or forsake you. All the promises of God are contained here. Which do you need to claim today? And not have arrogance. It's not you say, well, God, because I'm so special, you're going to give it to me. No, but God, you are so special that you made this promise, and I believe that promise. What do you need to claim today? It is not arrogant to claim the promises of God. In fact, it would dishonor him not to claim his promises. It gives him great joy to honor his promises. That's the kind of father that he is. So what do you need today? What do you need today from God that will help you be more faithful in your walk with him? What do you need? What promise do you need? Claim it. Believe it. For in believing it, it honors God. So Caleb's 85 years old, but he did not look for an easy task to fit an 85-year-old, did he? There are fortified cities on that hill. First of all, he's fighting uphill. Never a good idea, okay? He's fighting uphill. Second, there are fortified cities on the top of the hill with remnants of the Anakim, giants that could be in the cities. That's not an easy task. An easy task to be rowing a boat on a lake a little bit, but not to fight against giants in fortified cities on a hill. But God promised. I believe it.